I'd like to start by paying respects to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So I'd like to speak today, say a few words about the Buddha's teachings on what is real and what is not real. And I'd like to start off by saying a little bit about the Anattalakkhana Sutta, which is the discourse on not self, teaching on not self that the Buddha gave very early on in his ministry. And he was pointing to ways of investigating reality, applying our understanding, applying our wisdom to the experiences that we have. And he was asking the monks, actually the first 5 companions that he had been practicing with for many years, doing ascetic practices with, and he changed his way of practice and parted from them, but he came and found them after he became the Buddha, after he became fully enlightened, and he wanted to help them to also understand how to free themselves from all suffering. And he gave this teaching, and it really was the prompt, it really was the way in which they were able to break through and realize full liberation. And so it's a really powerful teaching, and it's really relevant for us to really study and to put into practice. And so he said to his companions, can you tell me, is there anything in your experience that is permanent? Is there anything you can find inside or outside in the world around you or within that is permanent, that is lasting? Or do we find that actually, things are constantly changing. There's nothing solid. There's nothing lasting. There's nothing, even the most permanent looking objects or even mind states, actually we can notice over time they shift and change. And even if we can't see that, say, look at a mountain. I'm living here in Canmore in Canada, in the Rockies, Canadian Rockies, and we're surrounded in this little town by huge snow-capped peaks. They sort of tower over the town. They seem omnipresent. There's almost something godlike about them. They're very awe-inspiring. And they certainly look pretty solid, to us little human beings, to the perception of a short-lived human being. These mountains are very lasting, seem very permanent, but of course they're not. One can watch the snow coming and going and know, we know, we have the knowledge that these things, even mountains, are in geological time are like waves almost. They rise and they pass. Quite remarkable. Much longer periods of time than our lifespan, of course, but even the mountains are not permanent. And in fact, if we look a bit deeper, we can see that they're changing very much more rapidly than that. So, the Buddha really invited this investigation. So can you see, can you perceive, can you recognize that things are changing? There's a constant flow to all of what we experience. things are impermanent. All dhammas are impermanent. In this case, dhamma meaning thing. All objects, all experiences also are impermanent. And the monks, who were with him, put their minds to this kind of investigation and responded to him, well, actually, yes, all things appear to be impermanent. There doesn't appear to be anything that lasts. And then the Buddha said, well, this state of affairs, is this a happy state of affairs, or is it unsatisfactory for us? Is it a source of suffering? And we can question, we can ask ourselves, is the fact that this body is impermanent, this life is impermanent, this health is impermanent, this youth is impermanent, is that a source of joy and happiness, or is that a source of disappointment and suffering? And looking at the people around us, the fact that they also are impermanent, that they're changing and they're aging and passing away from us, we're losing. We end up really losing all the loved ones, either because they die before we do or we die ourselves. We have to let go of all the cherished friends and family members because they're impermanent, because of mortality. Is that a happy, joyful cause for celebration, or is that a difficulty for us? Is it painful for us? And we can reflect on the objects around us also, the possessions we might have, the things that we cherish and appreciate around us. Are they lasting? Are our cherished possessions really reliable for us? Do they last? And we can notice that, well, actually, yeah, things do have a lifespan. Almost everything in this material world we can see, well, yeah, it's great for a while, and then it will tend to break down, it will tend to decay in one way or another. And then, or it'll break, it'll pass on. We'll have to chuck it away at some point, have to let go of it. And if some of our possessions are very lasting, in our houses we have all sorts of things, don't we? Books and paintings and all the decorations and all the wonderful cherished items that make us feel at home. It's a pleasant thing to have a space that we can call our own. To some extent it's pleasant, but then what happens is, of course, things change. And even if we don't lose those things, even if the books and the pictures and the chairs and the furniture and all, outlive us, we have to part from them when we come to the end of our lives. So, is that a source of joy for us? Is that something good, or is that something that we find challenging? And so we can reflect and really investigate, is this true? Is it true that all things are changing? Is there anything I can find that's not changing, that's permanent? Investigating this, and then also investigating, well, is it a happy state of affairs? To see how fleeting things are, all experiences, as well as material possessions and people. All things are so fleeting, so temporary. Is that a source of happiness or suffering? Anyway, the monks, when the Buddha gave them this teaching, they reflected on his question and came back and said, well, actually, yeah, this is a source of suffering. We can see that all things are impermanent. And yeah, this is dukkha. This is not ideal. It's not quite what we would want. It's challenging. It's stressful. It's unsatisfactory. And then the Buddha said, so if that is the case, considering this nature of reality, that there is change, anicca, there's nothing permanent to be found here, and dukkha, there is imperfection in this experience of being a human being, a mortal being, surrounded by other mortal beings, on a constantly changing, in a constantly changing space. If that is the case, we can see impermanence, we can see suffering. Then how, the Buddha said, how is it possible for us to be able to call anything, relate to anything around us or within us as mine, as myself, as me? And this is a really powerful consideration for us. The Buddha again and again pointed to this aspect of reality, which is anatta, non-self, not self, the impossibility of making life personal, really, when we look at reality clearly. So, what do I think of as me and mine? And no doubt the monks were considering this, contemplating this teaching. Okay, it's all changing. Yes, that is true. There's the unsatisfactoriness of that. And then within that, do I have much control? Do I have much agency? Is there anything I can own and possess, really? No. And to come to the heart of the matter is to look at this body, to look at these feelings, to look at these perceptions that we have, the ways that we understand the world, name and label things in the world, to look at our memories and thoughts and views and opinions and our knowledge of things, and to look at consciousness itself. This sense of me is very strong, can be very strong in all of these aspects, all of these ways, these khandhas, these heaps of experience. I feel like it's my body because I'm in here somewhere. I'm inhabiting this, these are my feelings. They're very acute. They're very personal. Other people don't feel what I feel. These are very much mine. These perceptions and thoughts, well, I wouldn't be thinking this way if it wasn't right and true. This is how it is. This is mine. This is my understanding. And the consciousness itself, that's behind all of the mental phenomena, the ability to perceive, to think, to know, that which lies behind all of that, the consciousness itself, surely this is mine. It's here. But actually, as we know, when we have this wonderful opportunity to begin to practice meditation, practice mindfulness, and really look, really see, really feel what's going on within this mind and body, we can see that actually, these things can all be kind of divided and dissected, and we can see that the ownership, the sense of ownership of body or thoughts or feelings is actually a kind of construct. It's a kind of layer that we put on top of our experience. Consciousness itself has a tendency to knit together all the experiences and to create this sense of self, but it can be seen through. It can be seen as a construct. It's a fabrication, it's something that's created by the mind through ignorance, through not seeing clearly. And so this is a very profound investigation. And it's not a quick and easy, you don't just glimpse, have a quick look around and see how we're constructing a sense of self and then just let that be demolished. And from now on, recognize there's really no solid, lasting self here. There's really nothing one can own. There's no one and there's no owning. We don't get that straight away. It's not something we can, by and large, immediately understand. But through practice and through following the Eightfold Path, through meditation, through developing virtue, to steady ourselves and give ourselves some peace so we can then practice meditation, through developing, cultivating wisdom in our practice over weeks, months, years, we can start to kind of whittle away at this rather stubborn, rather persistent perception, delusion of selfhood. And it's a great thing to do, because it's a great thing to be able to investigate this, because it carries along with it the taste of freedom, because it's true. The truth gives us a sense of happiness and freedom, well-being, lightness and peace, because we're resting in what's real. And so to be able to begin to notice and give credence to, or give some of our energy to recognizing these three characteristics of reality, it's a very joyful process to know that there's constant change, and I can observe that. I can go with the flow of that. I can allow that reality to permeate the mind, to really inform me, And when I do that, I can recognize that it's foolishness. It's utter foolishness to try to perceive permanence where there's no permanence to be found. So much better to notice the flow, notice the change, and be have the attitude of accepting that. Immediately we start to free ourselves up, like water, flowing water. We can allow the current to take us along and not try to fight it, not try to make water into something concrete when all it does is flow. That's its nature. So, also recognizing dukkha, funnily enough, it's a kind of relief, isn't it? To acknowledge, to accept, to appreciate that actually, life is really not ideal. I mean, it can be good for moments, it can be good for days, even long periods of time. When we're healthy and happy and life's going well, and we're young, perhaps with lots of energy. I mean, there's an awful lot to enjoy there. But it changes, and to really recognize that life has its challenges, and we all have to face up to it. If there's birth, there's also death. If we actually open our hearts to that, if we actually acknowledge that and accept and even embrace that reality of dukkha, then we can start to feel a little bit of well-being because we're dwelling in the real. We're awake to what's true. And dukkha does not have to mean that we suffer, funnily enough, isn't it? The reality of suffering, the reality of the challenges of life, old age, sickness, death, loss, not getting what we want, getting what we don't want, attachments to all the experiences that we have. These things potentially can create enormous suffering, but they don't have to. They don't have to. If we can open fully to the way things are, then there doesn't have to be any suffering, and there doesn't have to be any attachment. It's a sort of hands-off, willingness to identify more and more with chitta, with that which knows, and not so much with the experience. As much as we identify with our experience and kind of immerse ourselves in our experience, we'll experience suffering. Because we'll notice things changing, we'll notice the kind of vicissitudes of life will swamp us and overwhelm us. But if we're ready, we're prepared, if you like, we're dwelling in the real, then one can observe reality and learn from everything that we experience. And even the challenges, when they come along, there can be a sense of almost like rolling up our sleeves. Right, yes, I'm ready to really look at this, to really experience this fully, not to turn away, to be present for this and let it inform me. And we can watch the wisdom grow and watch compassion grow, and there's great delight in that. So we can choose, we have an option. The non-suffering option is available to us, even within the imperfection of life. And if we can open our hearts to anatta, to the reality that there is nobody here to have anything, own anything, control anything. No, there's actually, when I'm really awake to experience and I'm practicing mindfulness, I can appreciate that everything I find the mind wanting to latch onto and make me and make mine, actually, no, it's arising and passing. It's not possible to really believe anymore that I can make this mine, or that I can call this myself, me. And again, a relief, again, a taste of freedom, a certain joy, because we're coming home to what's real. These three characteristics are very good to contemplate, very good to consider, and allow them to help us to kind of, take off the rose-tinted spectacles and put on the really good 2020 lenses for clear vision. These are like lenses. These three characteristics are like it's like, this is how to see reality. We can recognize that this is true. It's one of the laws of nature, if you like. Anicca, impermanence. Dukkha, imperfection. Anatta, impersonality, impersonal nature of all experience. And the Buddha also taught, another way of looking at this, which is what he called the vipallasa, the distortions of view. So we can consider the other side, the ways in which we tend to see things when the mind is clouded with ignorance, with desire and with aversion. It's not to flagellate ourselves because of this, not to make ourselves bad because we see things in wrong ways, but rather just to wake up to that tendency to actually see life experience in the opposite way, exactly the opposite way to the three characteristics. So there are actually four vipallasa that the Buddha taught and pointed out. Look at this, look at how we see things. Are we right or are we wrong? And so the reality of anicca, of impermanence, well, the vipallasa, the distortion of view that we generally struggle with, is seeing permanence where there is no permanence. And we can just notice that, like the way we view our bodies, often we really do feel that there's something lasting here. And I found myself when I was younger, I had no real, I couldn't really believe that I was going to die. I couldn't really believe it. I couldn't even really believe that I was going to get old. It's very compelling, isn't it, when we're young and healthy, to want to be very, to always need to see this as a perpetual state, because the mind just doesn't want to go into the ending of that, into look at those old people. I can't imagine I'll ever be one of those. And death is something which is the mind will shy away from quite naturally. We don't really want to go there. And I remember when I was living in a monastery where we had school visits. We'd have lots of students coming along and young ones also from high school and I don't know what we call it, middle school, junior school, and even very young ones, yeah. And they'd come along and we take them into the chapel of rest, and we show them the skeleton that we had hanging up in there, and just touch on, you know, the reality that people sometimes, you know, their bodies after death will come in here, and we contemplate death, and we look at the skeleton and we contemplate, you know, what will happen to this body, say 50 years time or 70 years time, or even for some of us 30 years time. And it was very noticeable that young people would simply switch off. They just shy away from that, or they'd find some way to distract themselves very, very often. And I realized that's so natural. It's like for younger people to turn the mind and contemplate death. It so goes against the grain. All the youthful energy and vitality just kind of switch into a different channel. Whereas older people, you know, once we've lost some relatives or friends and we've had perhaps some experiences of illness, or just noticing the body becoming less elastic, more stiff, more challenged physically, we can then begin to consider the possibility that it may not be continuing in even the same way. It's going to probably deteriorate further and end in death. So, you know, it's very good to contemplate death and to observe how we tend to not want to go there. But when we do, we can also observe how it's a relief. It's a relief to go there. It's calming. It's peaceful. And I think, again, because it's real, then there's something so restful about reality. It's a real taste of freedom to go there and to experience that peace, and the ability to start to really let go of our perception of permanence, this vipallasa, this delusion that is so compelling for us. And we can notice with, you know, all the things around us, how we tend to relate to them as though they are going to be there forever. And it's really helpful to just keep reminding ourselves, because of this tendency to distort the view and see permanence where there's no permanence, it's good to remind ourselves, you know, this will break too, this will end too, I'll lose this as well, one way or another. In my case, often because I actually literally lose things absent-mindedly, or, you know, at some point it will fall apart. It's going to go. It's on the way out. All the things around us are on the way out, just as we are moving in that direction inexorably. We're all on, you know, the exit is beckoning, really. And so just to see this, just to notice, you know, yes, we have the tendency to look at reality in the opposite way to the way it actually is, to see the permanent in the impermanent. And can we just contemplate that? Can we notice that? Can we give ourselves a chance to turn the view, you know, and get some more clarity and see things in a more realistic way? And when we do, we benefit from that. You know, our practice can really go very smoothly and very swiftly because we're watching the flow rather than, you know, sitting on the banks of the river. We're actually willing to follow the stream, follow it, let it take us to freedom, to nirvana, to the ocean of Dhamma, you know. So there's another two vipallasa, distortions of view, that relate to the reality of dukkha, of imperfection, of unsatisfactoriness. Again, the truth that's free is to know this, to know dukkha, to really understand dukkha first noble truth. The more we can approach dukkha, open to dukkha, face up, the more we can relax and be at ease in this world and free our hearts from suffering. So the vipallasa, the distortions of view, are the tendency we have to see beauty in the unbeautiful and to see pleasure in what is painful or happiness in what is a source of suffering. And that can sound really negative. You say it, I'm aware that, it can sound like a bit of a sort of killjoy approach to life. So all that is beautiful is actually really ugly, and all that is pleasant and happy is actually a source of suffering. But again, the Buddha didn't mince words. He was trying to give us what we want, rather give us what's a benefit to us. And if we're not seeing clearly, then it's good to have the opportunity to be put straight. And so we can see, contemplate, we can consider, in all that we find beautiful. In what we find beautiful, we can see that there is the changing nature, which tends to lead us from a perception of beauty to a perception of the unbeautiful. The body that decays and dies, or rather dies and then decays. The beauty in nature, well, also everything in nature has a life, and then it passes away, and it decays, it rots, it decomposes, and not so beautiful. Objects that come to the end of their span, their life will be broken, will be discarded, will be unwanted. And just to reflect on this, to reflect on the transient nature of beauty, is to be able to appreciate it all the more, appreciate what's beautiful in this moment, knowing that it doesn't last. It gives us more of an opportunity to see with clarity both the beauty and the unbeautiful, and to see that within beauty there is the unbeautiful, And in a way, within the unbeautiful, there's also beauty. Some people like to contemplate dead things, decaying things. And when one gives attention to something that's rotting, decaying, fading, wilting, dying, there's a kind of beauty to that. So, to be able to, in a way, see the bigger picture, and to question these perceptions of beauty and unbeauty. It's very helpful, and also pleasant, in the pleasant, in the pleasure, in the joy, in the joys in life, the pleasant peak experiences in life, of course, contain the seed of suffering, the unpleasant, and the sorrow, grief, lamentation, pain, and despair. Why? Because they change. They inevitably change. So every peak has a trough. Every high has a low. And when we start to open to that, open to the fullness of experience, we can let go of the grasping that naturally arises towards the pleasant, wanting to keep it, wanting to preserve it, wanting it to be permanent. Well, it isn't. But when we allow it to be what it is, which is flowing and changing and ceasing at some point, then we can, really actually start to live in a more complete and full way, develop wisdom, rest in that, take our joy from that, take our joy from the path, take our joy from understanding the way things are. And all of these reflections, really, all of these distortions of view, are encouraging us to hold on to a sense of self, hold on to a sense of permanence, and to grasp and to desire things to be a certain way. to argue with reality, to fight the way things are. You know, it's like kind of struggling upstream against the current, you know, in a canoe, say, rowing like crazy. And we just about managed to stay in the same place, rowing against the current. This is the Vipassana, this is the distortions of view. What a relief to wise up to the Buddha's teachings, turn the boat around. You don't even have to row then. You just sit in the boat and be taken along the stream, along with the current of Dhamma, the current of reality. So recognizing the unbeautiful, recognizing the transient nature of beauty, and therefore the unbeautiful in that, recognizing the transience of peak moments of joy and happiness in worldly life, is to be able to, you know, to really enjoy the moments of pleasure, knowing disappeared for a moment there. I fear that the internet connection may not be great. So I shall speak a bit more slowly and hope that most of what I say will actually be coming across to you. So, you know, the roller coaster of life. Life is a roller coaster. Life is, you know, constant interchange between the ups and the downs, one way or another. When we can start to accept that, you know, not hold on to the ups and not push away the downs, then we start to really develop this beautiful quality of equanimity, where we can roll with the punches. We can enjoy, kiss the joy as it flies. We can enjoy, and we can also allow the unpleasant to be present and not make a problem out of it. And in this way, we can really watch the nature of things, the way things are, and learn from every experience. The final Vipassana, the final distorted view, of course, relates to anatta, the reality of not self. The fact is, we tend to create this sense of self constantly, a sense of ownership, control, and especially a sense of me. Somebody's here. It's natural to do that, because we wouldn't be here if we hadn't got this tendency to ignorance. But we have great opportunity, a really great opportunity to shatter the ignorance, to see through, with the guidance of the Buddha, to see through the sense of self, to see where it begins and see where it ends. And to me, this is the most exciting, actually, the most incredible investigation that we can make, is to investigate the sense of self and to allow it, through our willingness to look at it, allow it to dissolve gradually. It's bound to dissolve gradually because it's not real. It's a construct, and like all constructs, it has a life. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an existence for a while, and then it comes to an end. It cannot sustain itself. It is delusion. And to begin to chip away at that, as I said, it's a process really for most of us. It takes time, takes application, but to bring in these contemplations. So noting that we're programmed, we're conditioned to see self where there's no self, to see permanence where there's constant change, to see beauty where there's not really not really lasting beauty, and to see happiness where there is actually the unsatisfactory nature of things. And it's a real wising up, it's a real maturing, to see these distortions of you and to recognize the three characteristics can be applied. This understanding of anicca, anatta, dukkha can be applied to all our experience. And when we do apply it, when we're looking to see the change, see the suffering, and see the impersonal nature of experience, then we're really on track, you know. And we can apply it to our meditation practice, apply it to what we experience when we're sitting, but also bring it in and apply it to our everyday life experience. This body, all its postures, all its activities, you know, wherever we are, it's very helpful to keep our mindfulness going, you know, not just on the mat or sitting in the meditation chair, but also in everyday life to keep the mindfulness sharp and bright. Bring in these contemplations, bring in the three characteristics, notice how they are true always. See if they're not true. See if we can find any flaw in this picture of reality that the Buddha's given us. Is it really true? Does it apply to me? So investigate. As the Buddha said, don't take any teaching that I give you as a belief system. Don't just believe it because I'm telling you. No. To really understand the Buddha teachings, we have to put them into practice and apply them and really investigate and have a skeptical mind, you know. Try and pull them apart, try and find the flaw in the Dharma teachings, because actually doing this, actually investigating in this way, it helps us to go deeper and deeper into the Dhamma, dive deeper into the Dhamma. It really does, because we're all the resistance to what's true, all the delusion, all the ignorance begins to be elucidated, enlightened, you know, when we investigate in this thorough way. So find fault with the Buddha's teachings, question them, challenge them, and then see where that takes us.